the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week.
Hey, this is Adrian Koehler, and you are tuning in to Business Story of the Week.
Fantastic. And that is the man himself once again here on Business Story of the Week. And of course, my name is Joshua. I am your host. And, we're going to have Adrian here for the second time. I'm very, very excited about this one. And what we didn't have last time, I think he was here, is we always start today or recently, we've been starting the episode with a question. And the question for today's episode would be, Adrian, what does candor have to do with leadership?
What does candor have to do with leadership? Well, I think it has a lot to do with leadership. It's such a fun question, man. It's in my mind spinning in so many ways. Well, what is leadership? We'll have to start by, starting there. So what is leadership? And I would say leadership, among all the answers that are out there, but leadership is getting results through other people. So, I could do it myself, and I'm kind of self-leading. I'm going to lead myself to go generate results, and that's, a good part of leadership. But as we all think about leadership, really leadership is I am with other people in such a way that they generate results. So if that's true, then how I am communicating is going to, either open up possibilities or shut down possibilities for the effectiveness of that happening. And that's going to affect the outcomes, the effectiveness, like the fact that I do it or don't do it, and the speed at which I do it or don't do it.
Wow.
So
I love that.
most of the pain that I see in leaders and their teams comes, like 5 examples coming to my head right now from clients right now about pain they're currently feeling because they decided sometimes last week, sometimes even 7 years ago, they didn't have a full rigorous conversation about an issue. And now they are reaping the results of the lack of candor.
That's it. The lack of candor.
So it's on 2 things. One is candor is, I think most people think about the what of candor, like what is said and how specific something is, and that's part of it.
It's part of it.
I think as important or even more important than that as a leader that speaks with candor, speaks with clarity, speaks with transparency and straightforwardness. That if I'm that kind of leader, actually I am modeling what type of leadership I'm expecting of the people on my team. So there is a cascading effect of not only content, but also character and also presence.
Wow.
So as I speak with love and consideration and diplomacy and all those things, but I also speak with straightforwardness and candor and to the point, I'm modeling what because I'm going to expect of them what I'm giving them, right? I'm a model. If I'm a leader, I'm going to be a certain way with them, and I actually expect them to be that way with one another or with the people that they lead. So it helps in both of those ways. First off, the instructions are clear and the outcomes are clear, and by when, that's clear. So though my own way of being is also setting the model that's going to work down the road, because things get diluted over time. Like if at the top I'm 80% clear, well, by the time the next level down communicates that to their people, that's going to be like 40% clear. So I want to be like really potent in my communication, so that as it naturally gets diluted down, it goes from 100 down to 80 instead of 80 down to 60 or 40.
I love that. I love that. Being clear with your communication, because it gets down, gets diluted. But also, I think you touch upon a few things there where candor, you have to be frank with yourself as well. Express with yourself. candor with yourself is very important as a leader.
Yes.
For all our audience, I love the way that we opened up right there. For all our audience and listeners right now, watching or listening for the first time, Adrian is back here as the second time. Adrian is a leadership engagement expert and a senior partner at Take New Ground, where he coaches fast-moving leaders to create transformative outcomes. I love that little keyword there. You also mentioned that with your answer earlier. Fast-moving, like so results are quick, with a background, of course, Adrian's background in philosophy, philanthropy, ministry, activism, and healthcare. He has guided executive across various sectors, from Fortune 500 companies to startups. He co-hosts Raising the Bar and the Naked Leadership podcast, and his work centers on fostering authentic leadership and meaningful change. Adrian's unique approach challenges leaders to break through barriers and achieve real results. And today, once again, he's going to be sharing all of that with us. Adrian, you mentioned about quick results right there, and I understand that you're on your website, takenewground.com. It says they're fast-moving leaders. It's right there. It's the first thing that comes up there.
Yeah.
Talk to us a bit about that. Why the quickness? Why the fast moving? What does this mean exactly?
I mean, I just prefer working with folks that are really committed to something. And if, you could be really committed to something and move slowly, that's cool, but that's boring to me. So it's a little bit my own way of selecting the types of people I want to work with. Because I like people that are action oriented, and hey, this is what we need to get done, and I'm gonna right now. I mean, sometimes I'm on a call with a client and we talk about something, and they say, hold on a second, and they send a text message, they send an email, and the whole thing is off to the races. So I'm compelled by folks that are action oriented, folks that believe they can get a lot done in a day. It's just a lot more fun. The results are catalytic, and their action, their own presence. I guess like I was talking about in the first answer, their own presence just sets the bar. Because I mean, otherwise the human brain is going to be drawn towards survival, like looking good, feeling good, being right, being in control. And part of the feeling good is feeling comfortable. But I like leaders that are going to be pushing the bar and keep going, keep going, keep going. We can make a lot of mistakes as long as we make them fast enough and learn quick enough, then we can go again. So, I mean, a lot of people like to spend a lot of time in analysis mode. And there's nothing wrong with analysis. It's good to analyze what's working and what's not working, what's wanted and needed. But most people that are still reflecting, or what's the phrase people say, I'm processing. And usually processing means I'm stalling. And I don't want to take the vulnerable step of actually making a move. So those folks that if I'm going to be talking to somebody on a regular basis and really psychologically hitch myself to their business and okay, if they're successful, I'm successful, because I take it that personally, I'd rather have somebody that's on the move.
Love that. And it's a great reminder too, especially for, again, our listeners out there, entrepreneur, business owner, executive, whichever way you are. I mean, just do it, right? Just get it done and then figure it out
Get
later
after
on.
it.
Just get after it. I love that you just
Get after it.
send that email and then figure it out later, even if it's wrong. Just get rid
Yeah.
of that anxiety, so to speak.
Yeah, that's why I like working with entrepreneurs versus just regular corporate leaders. There's a lot of coaches that like working in the corporate America because they can make a lot of money that way, or because there's some sustainability that way. That's fine. I just rather work with fast moving founders. Those are my favorite folks.
Wow, I love that. I think that's literally one of my questions, actually. But the question here was actually Navy SEALs and entrepreneurs. What would be the difference that you're looking at? Is there any parallels and similarities that you see in the challenges that they face when you work with them?
There are some similarities. The similarities are that Navy SEALs are extreme people. They're going to call themselves into, from a wartime perspective, at very dangerous situations, but they also call themselves into a high level of discipline, and usually in that regard way more than a lot of my entrepreneurial clients. SEALs get it. Anybody that's been in the special forces, they are elite, obviously,
Very elite.
and they've put themselves through a rigorous process. And so through that, though, they can shift. They can do this and it didn't work and they get up and go again. For them, it's life or death in a lot of situations. So they're very motivated to find the best way and to not be dogmatic about it's, if you're dogmatic on the battlefield, you're dead. Dogmatic meaning it's this way, it should be this way. I don't care what's happening. This is what the rule book says. This is what fairness says or whatever. You die that way. You have to adapt to your environment. Same thing with great entrepreneurs is that they are very willing and actually love to adapt to what's needed. Like, well, let's do this. Let's see if that works. If that doesn't work, great. We shift and go over here and we try that and we ask 10 people about it and get some insight from our board or other leaders in the industry. And we get up and we go again. And there's some similarities in how they love a challenge. And they're up for the 10,000 ways to solve a challenge, but they're deeply committed to solving it. So they're going to find the way. Like getting a no for an entrepreneur is usually very provocative. Like if somebody just off right now with a client of mine, he's raising money and he's gotten a series of no's. And he, like all the other great entrepreneurs I work with, when somebody tells him no, there's a fire in his belly. Like, I'm going to show this mofo. I'm going to, it's like, he told me no and he's going to regret it. There's that type of fire in them and competitiveness, if you will, that's really compelling and very effective.
There's a common results I see with, the guests I've had, who had military experience. I wouldn't say it's a guarantee that you'd be successful in business, but have you seen a lot of, like entrepreneurs and business owner who was successful because of their military experience? Is it that common?
For sure. I mean, I think the part of the character they breed into them is stick-to-itiveness and perseverance and creativity and action. And being disciplined on the small things and very strategic on the big things. Like they need to have, I mean, if you're in the armed services, you're always clear about what the goal is. What's the mission here? What are we here to get done? That plays right over into the business world and gives you a huge advantage because lots of people are action focused instead of outcome focused. So if you come into anything outcome focused, it's going to direct your actions. If you're like action focused, which is, I make the distinction between that and action oriented. It's good to be into action. But if you're just focused on what you're doing instead of what you're here to get done, you're going to give yourself a lot of credit for being busy.
It's easy to get lost, but it's easy to just kind of like lose sight of the vision, so to speak, lose sight of those goals because you have all these steps, you're optimizing these steps, and again, that's being action focused, which is good. But at the end of the day, we're leaders or we're entrepreneurs, we're business owners. We want results at the end of the day. Adrian, we didn't do this last time, but then again, we kind of started off the cuff, very, very different from what I usually do now. But lately, also, I've been starting the show with a question. Last time I asked you about origin stories. This time it's a little bit about that, but this time I ask it in a way where I say, what was the young Adrian Koehler like? What would the young Adrian Koehler what did the young Adrian Koehler think about leadership? Was he always a leader, authenticity and all that? Of course, you have your experience in the ministry as well, but maybe further younger than that. And what would the young Adrian say to the Adrian of today?
Wow. Lots of questions there. Let's see. Young Adrian Koehler, if I can remember, I just because, we had our lived experience, but now it's like watching. If I was watching young Adrian, what would I see? I was involved. I wasn't much of a sideline type kid. I liked to get involved. I was very competitive. Everything from competing with my older brother on the basketball court and, in front of my house growing up or playing all the sports. And my brother was a better athlete than I was. He's a bigger kid and he was, he literally set all the records at my junior high. And that's tough. That's tough. If you're a competitive younger brother, man, it's like, okay, I took that as fuel for me And I ended up, getting in. There was a gym that opened up, like a weightlifting gym in my hometown. I grew up in a very small town, 8,000 people. And there was a gym that opened up when I was in seventh grade. And the guy took a liking to me and my peer group, which was like all like kind of the athletic kids in seventh grade. And he taught us how to lift. And so we'd all come in together, work out together, and he taught us like like great form and programs and how to get better. And so I took that as a smaller kid. I figured that would be an opportunity to get an advantage, which it ended up being. I ended up playing football in college because I wasn't the most talented. I just outworked almost everybody. So being competitive and being behind compared to my brother growing up, that really helped me. So but also really inquisitive. I liked school. I wasn't like too cool for school. I dug it. I wanted to get good grades. It came pretty naturally to me. But I liked reading and just ate everything up I could. Both my parents are school teachers, so learning was a big part of my household. And my dad was a history teacher. My mom was a fifth grade teacher. So anyway, I took learning seriously. I took activity seriously. I was very much, even I'm just flashing back to I got a bicycle and it's about an hour, not an hour, it's about a mile ride probably to the school. And I was the one that would like coordinate all the guys to like all ride their bikes together. And I would go around and pick this kid up and then we'd go over here and get that kid. And
Wow.
one of the questions was, have I always been a leader? It came really naturally to me. And
Yeah,
I
that's
did
like
realize early that I was most comfortable if I was leading. So, I mean, throughout my life and even now, I'm cool. I don't have to be leading in a situation, but I have always been bothered if leadership wasn't happening.
wow. That's
Because
it.
leadership's like a thing, right? You can feel it, you can see it, like it has an effect on you. And if I'm in a situation where there's nobody leading, I will always step up and lead because every moment needs leadership.
Every moment
And
of leadership.
so I became very comfortable stepping up, even if I didn't know what to do or didn't know what to say, just raising my hand and I'll do it. I'll go. Does anybody want to do this? Sure, I'll do it, and just volunteering. So getting really comfortable on my feet happened when I was a kid. And then then there's some momentum. Then you start getting appointed, and people start to expect you to lead. And
Mm.
I knew that the vulnerability of leadership was good for me. Because when you step up and it's a risk that you're taking, you're going to risk public ridicule and that people don't like you or that you're just wrong and you mess it up. That happens countless amount of times. But that's good for the soul. It's good for it generates humility if you do it well. So I've always been open to leadership and would take as many opportunities as I could to lead, and I dug it. And there's obviously dividends on the back end. Like even like I'm coaching business leaders for the last dozen years. I've never had the jobs they have, but I have stood in the tension they're standing in because
Fascinating.
the tension of leadership is pretty universal. Like the specific domain of content or understanding, that's specific. But I just got off a call with a guy that's leading an AI driven defense company, and I've never taken a physics class or a computer science class in my life, but it doesn't matter because he and I are talking about him leading impeccably through this context. I don't need to know about his business.
Wow.
I
I
do know
love
about
that.
his business, but I don't need to because my conversation with him is about the human endeavor and how does he, and we're talking specifically about enrolling one of his employees into the next level of performance. And so I know how to do that. I know how to call myself into that. I've been coaching him for 5 years. We've been doing that together. And now it's helping him get language to break through to his guy. Yeah, I've always just dug that, and it's always been good for me to be in those forms of leadership.
He's been a natural leader. There are some people like that. It's just innate in them. It's just with them. I love how you mentioned fearing mistakes and making those errors actually shape your character, it shapes your personality, gives you humility. I love those reminders. you talk a lot about
Yeah.
leadership.
Well, real
Oh, go
quick,
ahead. Go ahead.
real quick on that. I mean, I don't know that I'm a natural leader. I don't know that I am. And I always feel much more insecure than I look. I've gotten the feedback a lot in my life that I seem confident, I seem self-assured. And I guess that's kind of by design because I know that, like, stepping in and being calm, being clear, that works. What I but I think so it's more so all the fears that everybody has, I have. What matters most to me, though, is making it count, like making my days count, making a meeting count, or today, making this podcast count. So, like, showing up for you and showing up for your audience matters more to me than if I sound smart or if I look good or all the natural kind of human concerns. So, I have, for whatever reason, just been really connected to what matters most to me, which is making a difference. And so therefore, I kind of look like I feel confident. I look like I know what I'm talking about. I look like I'm self-assured and a natural leader. But for me, I just live out of a different set of priorities than some people that might be paralyzed by fear. It's just because if you're paralyzed by fear, self-protection is the most important thing to you. Like, you can
Exactly.
have fear and fear doesn't have you, right? I can, like, feel fear, but I'm not run by fear because I've decided something else is more important than my fear.
Wouldn't you say that that ability is innate in most people and makes them, more effective leaders? Is that, I mean, the answer is pretty obvious, but is that a skill that can be developed? Like, I fear these things. Like, fear keeps me from being a good leader. We talk about leadership because, I mean, your answer right now was just fantastic because it's not just about leadership, but deeper than that. It's, again, it goes back to yourself and how you handle these things, how you handle, your own image of yourself and how you see, how you look with others. If you can't get through that, I don't think you'll be able to lead effectively. Adrian, this is exactly what you teach, leadership. But deeper than that, do you feel like, how do you teach this skill of, not being scared, not being fearful of how you might look like with others? Because I think that's a very, very common fear for a lot.
Yeah. And let me see if I can land this idea. So, I'm not saying that how do I teach people not to have fear? I'm not saying that. I think that's what people believe that want to hide behind fear, is because the premise behind that is if I had less fear, I could do more. But the villain in the story is fear. And I'm saying everybody has fear, unless you're like totally off and not connected to reality. And fear is a good thing. Fear actually informs you of, you know, ways in which you need to be cautious or considerations you need to have or, strategies to overcome potential difficulties. That's fear's job. Fear's job is to ensure that you make it till tomorrow, either in a very practical sense or in an existential sense. Sorry, it took me a while to get that word out. So I'm not saying don't have fear and I'm going to train people not to have fear. What I'm saying is know what you're actually scared of. Listen to your fear, squeeze it, understand it. It's trying to tell you something. So, what is it trying to tell you? And listen to it, and then see if it's worth it, and see if it's worth pausing for, or deprioritize it. It's like this. There's a phrase we just had this leadership academy that started last weekend. We'll do another 2 weekends coming up.
Wow.
And the phrase is significance breeds resistance. Significance breeds resistance. So meaning I'm scared, you're scared, we're all scared in life. If I think my fear is significant, then it will slow me down. If I think the fact that I have fear is insignificant, like I have it, it's there, I'm insecure, I'm unassured, I don't know what to do next, I'm going to look like a fool, blah, 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 the thoughts we all have. If I think that's not a big deal, then I'll move forward anyway.
I love it.
So to your question, I don't train folks into being less fearful. I train folks into being more resilient
That's
so
it.
that they can walk through the fear Like they can have the fear and the fear doesn't have them. They can have the fear and it doesn't slow them down. They move forward. And I think, I guess accurately, the fear is meant to slow you down. Listen to it. Check in with yourself. Is there something I'm not seeing? Am I being a fool? No, maybe. Okay, I'm going to move forward anyway and test my intuition, because fear is a part of your intuition and your intuition will save your ass. So it's like, it's good to listen to it, but then don't let fear be your master. Otherwise you'll have a smaller life and you'll blame fear, but it's not fear. It's your relationship to fear.
I love that. It's your relationship to fear, and it's
Does that
actually
make
there to
sense to
help
you?
you. It
Relationship to
absolutely
fear,
makes.
like what I mean by that? So it's
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
it's like fear is like a person knocking on my front door. And, they, I can open the door and here's fear telling me all of its concerns. And I can decide to listen to it and then say, okay, thanks, see you later, and shut the door. Or I can decide to say, oh, you're right. Come in and sit down and tell me more about this. Sit on my living room couch and
That's
tell
it.
me the 3-hour story about what I can't do. And so that's a relationship, right? How I relate to fear and the amount of power that I give it. So most people would like to hide behind fear and to protect themselves, but blame it on an emotion. Fear is just an emotion. And I do invite my clients to give priority to their reactions in life and to their responses in life and to their actions. I don't, to myself or anybody, advise people to let their feelings be running the day, because if your feelings are running the day, whatever the feelings are, if they're excitement even or despair, it's a gamble, because my feelings go all over the place. It's kind of like the wind. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know how long it'll last. I don't know where it's going to go next. Nobody does. So, banking on your emotions to guide your behavior is a pretty stupid bet. So it's like, let my vision guide me, let what I'm committed to guide me, and then my feelings will either be there to support that, or I might have some headwinds and I don't feel the way I want to feel to get the thing done. But you know what? This is how champions view the world.
I love that. I love that. And it kind of ties back to what you said. And like, you go out, you make mistakes, build humility, build character. In this instance, it's like listening to fear, having a relationship with that. It actually helps us a lot more because, we get to. I love how you tied it to intuition, by the way, because it's there to help you. Fear teaches you a language or something about you that you might probably be avoiding. It's something that's holding you back. But the real information that I want to touch up on is we were talking about, is it a skill to be built? And what you're actually teaching is resilience. And I love that. I recently had a guest who talked about that. She said that resilience is definitely a skill that we can build. And a lot of us go through a lot of trauma, a lot of disasters in our life, and it just builds resilience. Adrian, this is a great focus on what you teach. Talk to me about the connection between building resilience in leadership and creating a high performance culture. How does that correlate together and why do they go hand in hand?
Yeah. They're inseparable. You're not going to have a high performing team if that's not resilient. You might have, how would I say that? You might have people that are lucky. Like you might have a high performing team, but just for a sprint if you're not resilient. But, nothing ruins a plan like reality. And there's not a situation in which everything's going to go your way. So how quickly people are willing to accept failure, like that happened. I'm not resisting it. I'm actually owning it. It didn't work. We went out to kill that sales meeting and we didn't get the deal. And a lot of people will have a lot of excuses for why that happened. It's the client, it's the situation, it's the market, it's the fill in the blank. But high performing teams are going to say, we didn't do what it took in order to make that happen. I didn't do what it took. If I am in that level of acceptance, then I'm actually going to metabolize failure in a way that works for me, right? So I'll fail, but I will have a lot of extrospection and introspection. Like I'm going to look and see out there what what worked and what didn't work for the other person. I'm also then going to look internally. It's like what worked and didn't work and what was missing from me. And so I'll utilize my failure And that's essentially, I think that's what resilience is, the ability, willingness to get up and go again, no matter what happens. So high performing teams, if you're going to be high performing over any kind of long period of time, that's a part of the culture, is like, we fail here and we don't deny the fact that we fail. The best leaders in those contexts talk about their failures up front, not like in a cliche or anecdotal way, but talk about it in a very transparent and vulnerable way, because that shows to the people on their team that my boss is taking risks. And you're not going to have a high performing team without a willingness to go take some risks. But if you model it as a top leader and you model resilience, like getting up and going again, nothing's going to stop me from delivering on my commitment. That's what a resilient person says. Nothing's going to stop me. I mean, I might get paused in the moment because that didn't work. I went this way and it didn't work. And now I got to learn something or get some help or ask for help or then make a turn. But nothing's going to stop me from delivering on my commitment. That's what resilience is. So those things are like, they're needed. Yeah, inseparable.
Very important in business too, right? Like in business, it's like you're gonna keep making all these mistakes. To succeed with business, you just like that mistake and you just don't stop, and then okay, well, you move on, you don't make that mistake again, and eventually you'll win. It's just it's a long game. It's a long play when it comes to that, and that resilience, I think, is one thing that isn't taught much. And I don't think we mentioned that a lot on business, because in business people feel like we're just going to succeed. It's business. I have my own time. I control my own time, and because I'm not in a 9 to 5 job anymore, but you're in a 24/7 job now, and it's going to take a lot more resilience. And of course, the website for our audience listeners out there is takenewground.com. And by the way, again, on that, as you open that website, it's literally the first two words that comes up, or the highlighted words right there: alignment and resilience. Adrian, as we begin wrapping this up, you talk about resilience and very in-depth how it's inseparable for leaders. How about alignment? What does alignment have to do with leadership? But most importantly, I feel like it's important to have alignment, inner alignment, and alignment inside you as well.
Yeah. So we talk about, in any kind of company, there are conversations that are on the table and there's conversations that are under the table. And I always assert, because I just think it's the way the world works, is that it's usually the conversations that are under the table that are running the organization. So, for example, culture is made up of the concert of conversations that are happening with every single person. The conversation they're in about themselves, the conversation they're in about their leaders or about their peers or about their team, and the conversations they're in about the work themselves and the clientele and the employees. These are all trackable. They're all real. They're all there. Now, we might not be paying attention to them, but that's what's creating everybody's experience, is the conversation I'm in about myself and other people and the future and all that. So, but because they're not explicitly dealt with, they are typically under the table. So, for example, if there's a person that's on the team and they're a senior leader, but they've really been disengaged for the last 6 months, a lot of people will make an excuse for that or find a reason not to talk with the leader about it. And that's a problem. It's because for lots of reasons I probably don't need to go into. That's a problem. But they say they're loyal to one another, but they're not willing to be honest with one another. So those two things don't go together. If I'm loyal to someone, I'm actually going to be forthright with them, and I have love for them, and I care about them, and I want the best for them. So there's no context in which I can't give feedback or ask questions, at least, about, well, hey, what's happening? Hey, you say this, but you seem this way. What's going on? And, so you're wide open to feedback in that context. And so back to alignment. Alignment is in thought, word, and action. So then you don't know if you're aligned until you start speaking. Now, a lot of people have misaligned results, but they don't go explore those. They just try to give prescriptive answers. Hey, next time, why don't you do this? Instead of wondering about what's not, I guess, what is being ignored in the conversation. So if you and I were on a team, Josh, and we're both tasked at getting 10 clients in the next week, and I got, let's say you got 10 and I got 8. If we had a boss, the boss would maybe tell me, hey, next time do this. But instead, a powerful conversation is to say, hey, what was happening for you? So Josh killed it. Josh got 10. You got 8. Let's talk about what conversation you weren't in with yourself so that you could not only deliver 10, but maybe even deliver 12. And most people are not going to have that because we it's uncomfortable, and people would rather be comfortable than effective. So when I say alignment, I mean that like there's nothing out of bounds. Like, we're going to have conversations about everything. People love to complain about how much quote unquote time that would take, but it's a small investment and a big return on the back end. So alignment is to study current reality, study results. Current reality is going to tell you the truth more than you'll tell you the truth. Results tell you the truth. And then exploring around, where are we aligned? Where are we misaligned? I mean, even just earlier today, I had a conversation with a senior partner in my firm. We're talking about even just a compensation strategy internally. And we had that conversation 2 days ago. And I kind of laid over in the convo. Like, he had a strong opinion. I have a strong conviction, but didn't have a strong opinion. And I just agreed with him. I was bothered by that because I knew I was lying to myself. And we were talking again today, and we talked about it probably for another hour. We didn't make any quote unquote progress, or at least I didn't get him any closer to my side. And I'm not done talking about it yet, but I'm going to keep thinking and listening and wondering, and maybe I'll let things happen the way he prefers, which is not my preference, and pay attention to it. But we're going to keep going until we're aligned.
Okay. Wow. I love that.
But I'm not going to worship at the altar of like comfort. I'd rather be uncomfortable in the short term and be effective than be comfortable in the short term and long term ineffective.
I love that. And I love how you just pointed out that story with your partner, because these are conversations that you need to have. And these are conversations that's just required. You talk about the way you explain alignment, it feels like it talks a lot about values, right? Because there's company values, you put them up on your poster, you talk about like openness, honesty, and all that, but then you don't even listen to your employees. Like, they don't, they fear telling you what to be said. Like, it's one thing to put it up in a poster, but aligning yourself with that values is another thing. And of course, aligning yourself with your own values. In this case, Adrian, you said I'd rather embrace uncomfortableness, right? Like, instead of like going down the road of like worshiping comfort, and it doesn't produce as much results as we do. Adrian, as we begin wrapping this up, I love to touch up on that final bit of wisdom for our audience and listeners. Uncomfortableness. How do I become comfortable embracing being uncomfortable? Because no one wants that. Like, I try to grind, I try to hustle. I'm just trying. Hey, I got like maybe 5 hours of sleep before this interview, but I can't do that every day. But how do I embrace that uncomfortableness, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, it's good just to own the fact that the human mind wants to be comfortable. So anytime we're choosing uncomfortability, we're going against our nature. It's going to be, uncomfortability is going to be uncomfortable. So that's kind of the known thing is like, oh yes, I'm doing the thing my brain and my body would prefer me not to do. Like, for example, I just did like a 4-day water fast earlier this summer. And why did I do that? A buddy of mine was telling me about it, and I'm pretty competitive. I thought, oh, I can do that. And your first day in, you're not too bad for a little while. You got yesterday's food in you, and then all of a sudden you're, day 2, and that's tough. But you've promised to yourself, and if you're smart, then you've told other people you're doing it, just so like you're on the hook a little bit. It's not like you're doing it in private. You're already on the hook. And so you set the system up to help you succeed. So now I'm accountable to other people. And then, it's like next day I'm cooking food for my kids. It's pretty rough to like make food while you're not eating, but I'm already telling my kids what I'm about and doing this, and I'm drinking all my extra water. And why do I do that? Because it's good to challenge myself to get beyond my own comfort zone. So that's the first thing, is like it goes against what's natural. And so you're not like a special case to like want comfort. Everybody does. But what people don't do is find a reason to be uncomfortable. That's why, is because there's lots of reasons to be comfortable. But if you don't anchor yourself in your reason for being uncomfortable, like for example, when I did the water fast, I wanted to shed a little weight for sure. I also wanted to get mentally stronger. I knew that if I went 4 days and did what I didn't want to do, that was going to have rippling effects other places in my life, which it did, because now it's like, oh, I feel mighty. I feel strong. I feel courageous. You don't get that on accident. Those are all muscles you must build. So, practicing uncomfortability is a really great strategy for the short term and the long term. I do a cold plunge almost every morning. Why do I do that? Because I don't want to do it. That's why I do it. And if I go out and I get in the 40-degree water for however long I do it, even just getting in, that's the point. And I start the day off feeling mighty. Why? Because I did something that was mighty. Like I did something that most people are unwilling to do. Or back when I used to do triathlons and all that stuff and run marathons. Why do I do that? Because most people don't do that. They're unwilling to put themselves through a rigorous process in order to have some kind of outcome. And I did that for myself to build my internal man. So I feel better about myself. It's like, oh, I can run for 5 hours. I can do that. Most people are not going to do that. And I just believe that about myself now. And nobody gets to take that away from me. So nobody gets to create your own conversation about yourself.
Right.
You sign up for it. They might give you their judgments. They might give you their limitations, but you don't have to believe any of them. You craft your own internal narrative. So, if anybody's listening right now and thinks, okay, I'd like to get some better results in my life, great. Challenge yourself internally to do something you don't want to do. And you will naturally be much more confident, much more courageous. And then the sky's the limit. Everything starts to open up. Like I'm willing to throw myself at really anything, because I've just proven to myself that I will overcome. I might fail, but I'm going to be resilient and overcome no matter what.
That's it. I love that I asked you that question, because it's a
Great question.
I love it, because it's a great reminder for me as well. Like, why do I ran marathons too, and my sister would be like, why are you exercising and working out too much? And she's like, people don't want that uncomfortableness, but you're doing it every day. And of course she sees the value in that, but it's a great reminder for me, a great reminder for audience and listeners out there. I think it's one thing to put yourself in that discomfort, but also another thing to be intentional about it. Like you said,
right on.
What kind of inner man are you trying to write for yourself? You're putting yourself through this, but it's important to remember that, hey, I'm doing this. That's a great reminder for me that I went through this discomfort, because I want to get used to it. To when another type of discomfort comes for me, then I know I can get through that. I know I have more courage and I have more belief in myself that I can get to do it. Adrian, you just validated everything, every excitement that I've had for this episode. I'm truly, truly happy again for you agreeing to come on here again. Thank you so much. Once again, the website is takenewground.com. Adrian, where else can we find you? Where else can we connect?
Yeah, connect with me on Instagram, adrian.k. Love to be in a conversation with anybody that reaches out to me, and let me know you're from this show. And that'd be awesome. What else? Yeah, if you it's all on that website now, but if you, especially people that are stateside, we've got trainings that are happening all the time. So we work internally with lots of companies. And so if you got a company, probably got to be about 5 million in revenue in order to work with us. But we do private work with clients, but then we also have these public trainings. As mentioning, we just kicked off this leadership training that'll be happening over the next 3 months. That's called Intrepid. You can learn about that from the website. It's the Academy for Effective Leadership, and it's actually looking at leadership from a coaching mindset. So it actually trains people in understanding their own machinery much more clearly, but then also being able to influence and affect someone else. That's Intrepid. That's happening now. But we have a 4-day personal leadership training that's closer to you, man. It's over in Hawaii, and that's happening in November. So that's a 4-day boot camp for the soul. It's fantastic. It's really, it's the aim of that training is to understand the thought life that's really governing your world, and then to see that, and then to shift that in ways that are going to be more productive for you and your family and your team and whatever is there for you, other people, whoever is the other people. So anyway, come check that out. And if you want to come to one of our trainings, reach out to me and I'll make sure you get the right link, and I'll make sure that, I'll even give you a little bit of a deal if you came from this podcast.
Fantastic. To all our audience and listeners out there, you know where to find Adrian. And once again, thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you for coming on the show.
Joshua, love being with you, buddy. Thank you, man.
Honor, a pleasure to all our audience and listeners out there. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.